In a quiet corner of Camden, Maine, where ocean mist clung to weathered, clapboard houses, Alexander Alex Thompson bent over the engine of a rusty Ford, his hands steady despite the ghosts that lived in them. The sign above his workshop read, "Second Chance Auto," painted in fading blue letters on wood salvaged from the harbor. 2 years had passed since Afghanistan, since the explosion that left scars across his back and the military discharge papers that said honorable but felt anything but. The real wounds weren't visible. They lived in the silence of his family home in Oklahoma after he'd finally spoken his truth. In the empty spot beside him where David had promised to stand before discovering that loving a gay Marine required more courage than he possessed. The wrench in Alex's hand tightened with precision, born from years fixing helicopter engines under enemy fire. His new battles were quieter now. The leaking roof of his coastal cottage, the whispers that followed him down Main Street, the sermons at First Baptist, where Pastor Jenkins spoke of sinners and salvation with eyes that always seemed to find him in the back pew. Yet among the cold shoulders were warm hands, like Martha's, the silver-haired owner of Harbor Light Cafe who saved him coffee and conversation each morning, slipping him extra muffins with motherly concern about his too-thin frame. Through the garage's open doors, Alex watched 16-year-old Tyler, Martha's grandson, lingering by the vintage motorcycles with longing in his eyes. The boy came by most afternoons, asking questions about engines, but really seeking answers about life. Alex recognized the careful way Tyler monitored his words, his gestures, the familiar dance of someone afraid to be fully seen. When local men muttered fairy or queer within earshot, Alex noticed how Tyler flinched first before him. Nightmares still woke Alex at 3 a.m., the sound of mortar fire, David's voice saying, "I can't do this." His father's Bible slammed on the kitchen table, but daylight brought purpose through broken transmissions and salvaged parts. In every repair, Alex rebuilt himself, each fixed engine a small redemption. He'd survived the battlefield only to discover the war continued at home, fought not with weapons but with whispers, prayers, and turned backs. Yet his hands remained steady, fixing what others discarded, machines and maybe, someday, his own fractured heart. Subscribe to Heart Stories for more journeys of resilience and redemption. Because sometimes the bravest battle isn't fought on foreign soil, but in the quiet corners of American towns where heroes aren't always welcome home. The northeastern storm announced itself with skies turned bruised purple above Camden's harbor. Weather alerts blared warnings across cell phones while residents boarded windows and stacked sandbags against the promised deluge. Alex had spent the morning securing tarps over his cottage roof, weighted with bricks against winds forecast to reach hurricane strength. The blue plastic flapped violently as he hammered the final corner, knowing it wouldn't hold against Maine's fury, but hoping it might minimize the damage to the few possessions he still cared about. Rain began as violent, sideways sheets just as Alex's garage lights flickered, then surrendered to darkness. He fired up the backup generator, its grumble a poor substitute for electricity, but enough to power essential tools. Through the downpour, headlights appeared, faint, distressed flashes cutting through sheets of water. Alex squinted as a black Lexus SUV limped toward his garage, its right front end noticeably lower than the left, hazards blinking desperately against the storm's wrath. The driver's door opened, and a man emerged, immediately drenched. He moved awkwardly toward the garage, his gait uneven and labored. Lightning revealed his face, handsome, strained, and unmistakably determined despite obvious pain. "Are you open?" he called over howling wind. "My tire blew out, but it's more than that." The stranger gestured toward his leg, and Alex noticed the sophisticated prosthetic limb visible beneath soaked dress pants. The mechanisms jammed completely. "I can barely walk." Under shelter, the man introduced himself as William Pierce, his handshake firm despite water streaming from his expensive coat sleeve. "I need to get to Portland Medical Center," he explained, checking his watch anxiously. "My sister's having complications with her pregnancy. The baby's coming early because of the barometric pressure drop." William's prosthetic leg, A marvel of carbon fiber and microprocessors, had locked at a painful angle. The joint mechanism seized from water damage or impact. Alex recognized the model, cutting-edge medical technology, far beyond what most veterans received. This needs specialized equipment, he admitted after examination. There's a medical supply store in Rockland that might have the component. William's face fell. I'm on a business trip, left my wallet at the hotel with most of my cash. I just need to get to Portland tonight. My sister has no one else. The decision crystallized without hesitation. Alex retrieved a lockbox from beneath the workbench, counting out nearly $3,000, his entire savings for roof repairs. I'll be back in 2 hours, he promised, grabbing keys to his weather-beaten truck. As Alex fought the flooded roads to Rockland, water began seeping through his workshop ceiling, soaking tools and invoices. He pressed harder on the accelerator, rain hammering like mortar fire, his mind not on the damage accumulating at home, but on a stranger's jammed leg and a sister about to become a mother during nature's fury. Through the night, Alex worked by generator light while rain formed puddles at his feet. His fingers moved with surgical precision across the prosthetic's complex mechanisms. When dawn broke, William tested his repaired leg, wonder spreading across his exhausted face. You've saved 2 lives today, he said simply. Pressing payment into Alex's hand, Alex refused the money. Just get to your sister. As the Lexus disappeared into the storm's remnants, Alex turned to face his workshop's soaked interior, water dripping steadily through new holes in the ceiling, knowing the roof repair fund was now just an empty box. Yet in his chest burned something warmer than regret, a quiet certainty that transcended the storm's devastation. Water dripped relentlessly through Alex's bedroom ceiling, forming dark constellations across the plaster. The Northeastern had moved offshore, leaving Camden to assess its wounds in weak autumn sunlight. Alex's cottage had suffered significantly. Insulation sodden, wooden beams warped, family photos damaged beyond salvation. The workshop fared marginally better, though moisture threatened the electrical systems and rust already crept across metal tools left exposed during his absence. Martha arrived with coffee and concerned eyes, surveying the devastation in silence before speaking. First National's offering emergency loans, she suggested, handing him a steaming mug. Alex shook his head, explaining his previous application rejection. Credit scores shot from medical bills, and apparently my income stability doesn't meet their threshold. What he didn't mention was the loan officer's barely disguised discomfort upon recognizing him, how the man's eyes had flickered to the rainbow keychain before mumbling about risk factors. Word traveled with peculiar efficiency in small towns, particularly news tinged with judgment. By afternoon, Alex overheard conversations at the hardware store. Voices lowered but perfectly audible. Spent his roof money fixing some stranger's fancy fake leg. One local contractor remarked, can't even take course of his own place, but throws away cash on the first sob story that drives up. The comments stung precisely because they contained fragments of truth. His roof was indeed destroyed. His savings gone, all for someone who disappeared into the storm. Sunday brought Pastor Jenkins' sermon on prudent stewardship and misguided charity, biblical passages about caring for one's household before others. Though Alex wasn't named explicitly, the congregation's furtive glances toward his usual back row seat conveyed the message clearly. He slipped out before the final hymn, unwilling to endure handshakes tainted with pity or condemnation. Tyler appeared at the garage Monday afternoon, his lanky frame hesitating at the entrance. My grandfather says you're irresponsible, he stated bluntly, watching Alex sweep water from concrete floors. But I think what you did was brave. The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm like you. You know, not just the mechanic stuff. Alex paused, recognizing the courage this admission required. I know, he answered simply. And you're braver than I was at your age. Tyler's eyes filled with tears before he quickly brushed them away. How do you do it? Stay here when everyone thinks they know what's wrong with you. Despite mounting bills and dwindling customers, Alex continued his quiet acts of service, fixing Widow Johnson's ancient Buick free of charge when her Social Security check wouldn't stretch, jump-starting the school bus when it stalled in morning frost. Each small repair represented defiance against whispers that he was selfish, broken, wrong. A month after the storm, an envelope arrived by courier, cream-colored, heavyweight paper bearing a Boston return address. Inside lay a first-class plane ticket and an invitation to a medical technology conference at the Fairmont Copley Plaza. No explanation accompanied these items, only a handwritten note. Some debts can never be repaid with money alone before. Please come. Martha examined the invitation with raised eyebrows. Must be your mysterious storm visitor, she concluded. Whatever you fixed, it was clearly worth more than you realized. The roof still quaked. The bank account remained nearly empty. Yet as Alex held the ticket, something fractured inside him began to mend, not from the prospect of assistance, but from the simple acknowledgement that his sacrifice had mattered to someone, somewhere beyond Camden's narrow boundaries. The Fairmont Copley Plaza gleamed with old-world opulence, crystal chandeliers reflecting against marble floors, doormen in crisp uniforms, guests in tailored attire. Alex stood frozen in the lobby, acutely aware of his best button-down shirt's frayed collar and the scuffed leather boots he'd polished frantically in his hotel room. The conference badge hanging around his neck seemed to broadcast his outsider status, a plastic admission ticket to a world built on privilege and connections. Following directions to the grand ballroom, Alex slipped into the rear as lights dimmed for the keynote presentation. The massive screen illuminated with Pierce Medical Innovations redefining mobility. While an unseen announcer introduced the company's founder and CEO, Alex's breath caught it as William Pierce walked confidently onto the stage, the same man from his garage, moving with fluid grace on the prosthetic limb Alex had repaired during the storm. Before discussing our latest advancements, William began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the packed room. I want to share a personal story about service and sacrifice. The screen behind him shifted to display a photograph, younger versions of William and another man in military fatigues, arms thrown casually around each other's shoulders. 10 years ago, I lost my leg during an attack on our forward operating base in Afghanistan, 3rd Battalion, Marines. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. His battalion, his deployment. Though he couldn't recall encountering William personally among hundreds of servicemen, William continued, describing how losing his limb led him to pioneer advancements in prosthetic technology, founding Pierce Medical Innovations to create solutions for wounded warriors and civilian amputees alike. Last month, while traveling through Maine during a northeastern storm, my prosthetic malfunctioned. I found myself stranded, desperate to reach my sister, who was in premature labor. William paused, scanning the audience. That's when I met a fellow Marine who'd taken a different path after service. The screen changed to display Alex's workshop sign, Second Chance Auto. Murmurs rippled through the audience as William described their encounter, how Alex had spent his entire savings for specialized components, working through the night while his own home flooded. What Alexander Thompson didn't know, William revealed, emotion evident in his voice, was that we'd served in the same unit, experienced the same attack, though we never met directly. He also couldn't have known that my sister's baby, my nephew, might not have survived without his intervention. Alex felt heads turning towards him, curious eyes finding him pressed against the back wall. William extended his hand toward the rear of the ballroom. Alex, would you join me on stage? The spotlight swung in his direction, momentarily blinding him. His feet moved mechanically forward, through parting crowds of healthcare executives and investors who suddenly seemed less imposing. Reaching the stage, Alex found himself facing hundreds of attentive faces while William clasped his shoulder warmly. What struck me most wasn't just Alex's technical skill, William continued, but the quiet dignity with which he lives his truth in a community that hasn't always embraced him. The statement hung in the air, direct, Unapologetic, William turned to face Alex directly. I've since learned about your journey, not just as a veteran, but as a gay man who chose honesty despite the cost. After my discharge, I made different choices, hiding parts of myself to build this company without controversy. William's voice softened. I kept my identity closely guarded, afraid it would undermine my credibility in a conservative industry. Your courage that night showed me what true service looks like, helping without hesitation, regardless of judgment. The revelation rippled through the ballroom. Whispers, then stillness as the audience processed this moment of unexpected vulnerability from their keynote speaker. William faced them again, standing straighter. Pierce Medical has always championed in physical rehabilitation. Today, we expand our mission to include creating environments where all veterans and employees can bring their complete selves to their work and communities. We cannot innovate while hiding in shadows. As applause rose around them, Alex recognized in William's eyes a familiar weightlifting, the exhaustion of pretending, of compartmentalizing, finally surrendered to something more powerful than fear. In this moment of public transformation, Alex understood that sometimes the greatest repair work happens not in garages or operating rooms, but in the fragile spaces between one person's truth and another's acceptance. Spring sunlight streamed through freshly installed windows at the renovated waterfront property that once housed Camden's abandoned boatworks. The weathered brick building now bore a new sign combining familiar elements: second chance heroes, technical training, and community support. Inside, sparkling equipment filled former storage spaces, while classrooms displayed both mechanical diagrams and resource materials for veterans and LGBTQ+ youth. Alex walked the polished concrete floors, still adjusting to the reality of this transformation. 6 months had passed since the Boston conference, where William Pierce had not only offered to rebuild Alex's workshop, but proposed a partnership, combining Pierce Medical's resources with Alex's mechanical expertise to create a training program for veterans and at-risk youth. The initiative focused particularly on supporting LGBTQ+ individuals facing employment barriers and discrimination. The first cohort of trainees would arrive next week, 20 participants, including 4 veterans transitioning to civilian careers and 16 teenagers seeking alternatives to traditional education paths. Tyler had been among the first to apply. His application essay, describing how watching Alex navigate Camden had given him courage to envision his own future beyond small-town limitations. Camden itself had undergone subtle evolutions since the program's announcement. Initial skepticism gave way to cautious economic optimism as the facility created jobs and attracted visitors. Martha's Cafe now supplied lunches for training sessions, her business expanding to include 2 new employees. Even Pastor Jenkins had moderated his rhetoric after his own son, serving in the Navy, came out during holiday leave. The minister's subsequent crisis of conscience, leading to coffee meetings with Alex, where theological certainty gradually yielded to paternal love. The cottage roof no longer leaked, professionally rebuilt alongside comprehensive renovations. Yet Alex had insisted on preserving certain elements: the salvaged harbor wood, now incorporated into conference room tables; his father's toolbox, displayed prominently in the main workshop; photographs from Afghanistan mounted in the Veteran Resource Center, including newly discovered images showing William and Alex at the same base, separated by mere yards without ever meeting. William visited monthly from Boston, their professional partnership evolving into deep friendship rooted in shared experiences, both military and personal. During yesterday's planning meeting, William had mentioned bringing someone to the grand opening, a significant step for a man still navigating his public and private identities with careful deliberation. Alex paused by the main entrance, running his hand along the architectural detail he'd specifically requested, a distinctive roofline extending protectively over the entrance, with engraved words visible to all who entered: "Shelter from storms." The design embodied their mission, creating not just vocational opportunities, but genuine sanctuary for those seeking second chances. The sound of tires on gravel drew Alex outside. A familiar face emerged from a car. David, his former fiancé, looking older and somehow smaller than memory preserved him. "Your mother told me where to find you," David explained awkwardly. I've been following the news about this place. Silence stretched between them. Years of unspoken words suspended in coastal air. I was wrong, David finally continued. About you, about us, about what courage looks like. I'm wondering if there might be a way I could volunteer here. Alex studied the man who had once broken his heart, recognizing both the damage done and the possibility of healing. Everyone deserves a second chance, he replied simply, extending his hand. As they walked toward the building together, Alex thought about the strange geometry of life, how paths diverge and reconnect, how storms destroy and create simultaneously, how sometimes the longest journey leads you exactly where you need to be. What unexpected second chances have transformed your life? Share your story in the comments below and subscribe to Heart Stories for more tales of resilience, redemption, and the courage to begin again when life seems broken beyond repair.